Hey, welcome back to Pizza with Roseville Sourdough. I'm Mike, and today I'm excited to show you the best pizza style you can make in the Ooni Volt 12. And spoiler alert, it is not a Neapolitan style pizza. It is this California style, Neapolitan style pizza. Let's get going. All right, so I've got all my ingredients here that I need to make my California style pizza dough recipe. My California style, like I mentioned, is a Neapolitan style. So it uses bread flour, a little bit more water than my Neapolitan, and it's gonna be a little bit thicker and sturdier. So we're gonna be able to make some awesome pizzas, and we're not gonna be limited by how much toppings we can put on top. So let's do that. Let's get it going and start this. The full recipe is in Pizza with Roseville Sourdough, which you can grab at rosevillesourdough.com. All right, so we're gonna start with 410 grams of water. That is 63% water. We're gonna add 20 grams of salt, that's 3% salt. 13 grams of olive oil, that's 2%. If you want an overview of percentages, you wanna head to rosevillesourdough.com to my free sourdough resources page, and they'll teach you all about how to use baker's math and baker's percentages. The difference between Neapolitan and Neo-Neapolitan or new Neapolitan pizza is really that Neo-Neapolitan is usually made with a little bit more water, has some oil in the dough, and is typically made a little bit thicker than Neapolitan style. All right, time for the sourdough. So we're gonna add 65 grams of sourdough. I'm going to swirl that sourdough in until it breaks up a little bit. I don't need it fully dissolved, just enough until the water turns milky in color. All right, time for some flour. So we're using the bread flour, like I mentioned. That's gonna be 652 grams. All right, so now nothing special. All I'm doing is using a silicone spatula to mix up all the dough. And I'm just going to incorporate all the ingredients together and make sure there's no dry flour. I'm not doing anything special. There's not gonna be any kneading. I'm just mixing the dough until everything comes together. At that point, I'm going to let the dough rest for an hour, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna show you how to do a fold on this dough. All right, if it starts to get too difficult to mix with your spatula, you can go on in and mix with your hands. You're just trying to make sure there's no dry flour. All right, that dough looks pretty good to me. Now look at this. If you look at this dough, it doesn't look like anything special. It is far from smooth, and it kind of just looks like a mess, but that's okay, because we're gonna let nature do its thing. We're gonna cover this and we're gonna let it set for 1 hour, somewhere warm. And we want that dough temperature to stay warm throughout the whole process. Sometimes you might wanna even check it with an IR thermometer to make sure that it's staying warm. Keep it in the oven, which is the light on. That'll keep it nice and warm. If it gets too warm, turn the light off or take it out of the oven. You're gonna check on it every hour as we do folds, and I'll show you what those folds look like. We'll be back here in 1 hour. All right, so our dough has been resting for an hour, somewhere warm, and it's ready for our first fold. This is the first fold I recommend on basically all of my recipes. It's called a stretch and fold, and you'll see why here in just a second. When you do a stretch and fold, the biggest thing you're gonna do is establish a smooth side and a seam side of your dough. That's gonna become important later on when we're making the pizza. Right now, all you gotta know is that you're establishing a smooth side and a seam side. I'm gonna show you how to do that. So reach in your dough, grab a little bit, stretch, and then fold over the top. That's why it's called a stretch and fold. Grab the next little section, pinch it, pull up over the top, and fold. And you're just gonna do this around and around. You're gonna know it's done when you can lift the dough out of the bowl like just happened, right? So when I can do that, I know that it's ready to get flipped over. So all I'm gonna do is flip it over, and now my seam side's on the bottom. Did you see that? I was making the seams on the top, and I flipped the whole thing over. Now my smooth side's on top, and my seam side's on the bottom. Now, it doesn't look smooth, that's okay. It doesn't need to right now. I'm just gonna tighten up that seam on the bottom, doing something called a rhubarb technique, which is just using the edge of the bowl, it's kind of a backstop, kind of doing this kind of motion. And you're rotating the bowl. If you've ever seen a diving arm mixer, it's rotating and it's mixing at the same time, kind of replicating that motion, but just with your hands. Look how much smoother that dough ball looks already. This is just sat for an hour, one stretch, one little rhubarb technique. Look at that, super smooth, it's looking great already, and we just got started. So I'm gonna put this cover back on. I'm gonna let it sit somewhere warm for about an hour. You'll notice that I've got a little dough on my hands. That's okay. A little bit of dough is fine. You'll notice where that dough is though. I'm not grabbing the dough below the second knuckle of my fingers. You got the first knuckle here, second knuckle, there's dough there, but there's nothing below that. And that's because right now it's still early on, the dough is gonna be a little sticky. As the dough ferments, it's gonna become less sticky because good dough is gonna wanna stick to itself, not to you. So it'll get less and less sticky as we go. So while it's sticky, don't grab the whole dough with your whole hand. Just use the tips of your fingers, the like top tip and the middle tip here, just to when you're folding your dough, grab it, pinch it with that part. Don't let it touch your palm or anything below that second knuckle, or you're gonna have dough stuck all over your hand, all right? So that's it. We're gonna let this sit for 1 more hour. All right, so it has been an hour since you did your stretch and fold, and now we are going to do a fold called a tuck and rotate. Now, our dough ball is looking really good and smooth, looks fantastic. We're going to do a tuck and rotate because this dough is too dry to do a coil fold, which is usually the next style of fold that I recommend. So with the tuck and rotate, we're simply going to go into the bowl and lift the whole thing out. And we're going to tuck the edges under, and we're going to rotate the dough. Tuck and rotate. Tuck the edges under, rotate the dough. How many times are you gonna do this? Until the dough starts to fight you. Now, I've only done this about 4 times now. The dough's already tightened up on me, which tells me it's done. It doesn't want any more folds. So I'm just gonna go through and give it a little tight seam on the bottom. Put that back in my bowl, cover it up, and I'm gonna let it rest for another hour. You're going to do this every hour until it's sat for 5 hours from your mix, okay? So after your first hour, you're doing a stretch and fold, then tuck and rotate, tuck and rotate, tuck and rotate, tuck and rotate. That's 5 folds, 1 stretch and fold, 4 tuck and rotates, all right? At that point, you're going to be ready to make a decision on how you're going to ball your dough, all right? So I'm not gonna show you all of those tuck and rotates. It's gonna look exactly the same as what I just did. The next step, after you've hit your 5-hour mark, rotating, tucking and rotating every hour, you're gonna decide if you're gonna do option 1 or option 2. Option 1 is you're gonna stick this whole bowl of dough after you've done that last tuck and rotate into your refrigerator, all right? That's gonna sit overnight. The next day, when you're ready to make pizza, 4 to 6 hours before you're ready, you're gonna take it out and you're gonna ball it. I'm gonna show you how to do that in a second. All right, then we've got option 2. Option 2 is fully dependent on how much fridge space you've got. If you've got the space to cut and ball your dough and leave your dough in dough trays in the fridge, go ahead and do that, all right? It's gonna be less potential that your dough is gonna get a hole in it. If you don't, that's okay. You can still ball your dough 4 to 6 hours before you wanna use it, like I said in option 1. And that's actually my preferred option, is option 1. But if you have the space in your fridge and you wanna cut and ball now, that's fine too. After that 5 hours, instead of doing that last tuck and rotate, dump your dough out, cut it and ball it. I'm gonna show you how to do that right after this. I'm gonna go let this sit for another hour, and then I'm gonna do all my folds, and then I'm gonna do option 1. I'm gonna put it in the fridge, and I will see you back here tomorrow after it's sat in the fridge overnight, and we're going to cut and ball that dough. I'm gonna show you a couple balling techniques that you can use, how to store your dough before you wanna make pizza with it, all right? I'll be right back. All right, so I went with option 1. So I'm gonna show you what that balling technique looks like. Now, this technique's gonna be the same, whether you went with option 1 like I did, or option 2 where you balled up your dough, put it in your dough tray and put it in the fridge overnight. You're gonna use the same balling technique for either of those 2 things. Pretty simple, you're just gonna take your dough out of your container. I like to ball up my dough cold because I feel like it's easier to ball. I wanna show you a little trick real quick. So there's a good way. We know that our dough ball should be about 290 grams, but there's a cool way to tear out your scale to see how much dough is in your bowl. Say you have a really wet dough. So you put everything on your scale and you hit tear, and then you dump your dough out, and then you put just your bowl back on the scale, and that tells you how much dough there was. So 1,143 grams, all right. So that's gonna be 286-ish grams per dough ball. So right around that 290 mark that we were going for. So let's go ahead and quarter this up because we know we made 4 dough balls. Let's see how good our quarters are. 290 on the first one. You know it's gonna be a good day when you nail it on the very first one. That was awesome. All right, that one's a little small, that's all right. We're just gonna go through and cut off a little bit on each one and get it to the right size that we need, and then we can ball everything up. We'll do that quickly. All right, great. So we've got our 4 dough balls here, all roughly 290 grams. And we're gonna do a quick balling technique on these. So if you remember when I was talking about the folding, the smooth side and the seam side, so the smooth side of my dough was up in the bowl and then I tipped everything over. So now the smooth side's on the bottom. So I'm just gonna remember that, and I'm just gonna take it from the corners And I'm going to fold the dough into itself until it starts to form into a little ball. All right, just like that. Then I'm gonna flip it over. Use the edges of my hands to tuck the dough underneath. All right. And then I'm gonna use gentle pressure, pushing straight down and going in a circular motion to tighten up that seam on the bottom. And if needed, I'm gonna flip it over and check to make sure that seam is nice and tight on the bottom so I don't get any holes in my dough. That looks really good. Let's just go through and do it for the last of these dough balls, okay? So one more time here, in from the corners, until it starts to look like a little dough ball, and it might start fighting you a little bit too. Then flip it, edges of your hands, seam that dough up on the bottom, and then gentle pressure straight down as you go in a circular motion. And then check the bottom. See, there's a big crater there. That's not good, so we want to tighten that up. If we leave that big crater there on the bottom, it's just going to make sure that there's a hole right in the center of our pizza dough, which we don't want when we go to stretch it. So let's tighten that up. There we go, that looks good. All right, great. So now we've got 4 dough balls that are all balled up. What do we do with them now? You're gonna wanna put them into a dough tray. So let me grab one. All right, so Ooni just came out with these dough trays and I'm really excited about them. So they are a dough tray that fits really, really well in your fridge, and they fit 6 dough balls just perfectly. We've only got 4 today, but that's not a big deal. We can put these into our dough trays. Now, it comes with this bamboo lid. That's like a separate thing, which is a little prep lid, which I love. So especially if you're like traveling with this, it nests super well on top. And so you can take it with you and prep your pizzas on the little bamboo lid if you want, or just a standard plastic lid. Great thing about these, they come in a 2-pack and they nest perfectly, so it takes up less space when they stack. And there's no ridge in the bottom, which is amazing. If you've ever used the other ones, they had a ridge along the bottom and it was harder to get your dough out. So these have no ridge. They're really sturdy. Great product. Thank you, Ooni, for sending me these. I'm super stoked to start using them. So let's go ahead and put our dough in. You don't need to put anything down in your dough tray. Just make sure it's clean and it'll be fine. Like I said, it fits 6 perfectly. We got the 4 today. We're gonna go with the 4 just like that down in the dough tray, and then the lid on top. Now we're gonna let this sit for the next 4 to 6 hours before we make dough. Why is that important? Stretching cold dough is a great way to get holes in your dough. You wanna make sure your dough has plenty of time to come to room temperature. That's why I give a range. If it's warmer, it'll take less time. If it's colder, it'll take longer, all right? And you'll know when the dough is relaxed enough is when you start to stretch it, it doesn't fight you, okay? It'll want to open up. It's called extensibility. You're gonna get that by letting this dough rest. So 4 to 6 hours, we're gonna let it rest and we'll come back here and we're gonna make some pizza. All right, so our dough has been resting and now we're ready to make pizza. So what do we have to do? We've got to preheat our oven. This is the Ooni Volt, and we're going to get it preheated to 750 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 400 degrees Celsius. Let's turn it on and get it started. Turn it on, you get it plugged in, and then you flick the switch on the side. Little button in the front turns on. Little welcome note, light turns on, and then you go ahead and dial in your temperature, and you can hear it click on and it starts to preheat. This is gonna get hot really fast. It's only gonna take 15 to 20 minutes to hit that temperature. And once it does, we'll be ready to make some awesome pizza. This is a great opportunity to talk a little bit about the Volt and why it's so special. I spent a lot of time working on Ooni Volt, and it is a great pizza oven. If you only have an indoor space and you are serious about making amazing pizza, this is an absolute no-brainer to get, okay? Fantastic pizza oven, the tech in it is outstanding. The reason why it shines so well at all kinds of styles of pizza is because it's pre-programmed to work differently depending on the style of pizza that you're making. It's smart enough to know when you set a certain style of pizza by setting the temperature, it's going to direct heat in certain ways to make sure that you make the perfect pizza every single time, no matter what style of pizza you're making. So today I'm doing the Neo-Neapolitan, and you're gonna see why this oven is so special. Let's let it come up to temperature and then we'll go ahead and make our pizza, all right? See you back here in about 20 minutes. All right, so my Ooni Volt has been preheating here for a few minutes, and I know it's almost temperature because it's telling me it's at 650 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm gonna start making my pizza. So let me grab my peel. This is a 12-inch bamboo peel from Ooni. I've got some dough that I made earlier that I'm going to use the exact same recipe that I just showed you. All right, so I'm gonna start by putting a little bit of semolina flour. I like the coarsely milled semolina. I find it makes it really easy to remove the dough out of your container, and it also makes a great dredging flour, which I'll show you what that means in just a second. So these are the Ooni stack. It's really nice to use these as a dredging bowl, like I'm gonna show you, but also just if you're making a couple dough balls, it's a nice container for that. I've got my dough ball, and I put the whole thing down into the dredging flour. I'm gonna flip it over to make sure that it's really well coated in the semolina flour. If you don't have semolina, that's okay. You don't need semolina flour. I prefer to use a bread flour as dredging flour if you don't have semolina. And I'm going to show you a shaping technique now on how to open up this pizza to the 12-inch size. So I like to start by coming in and working out the edges of the pizza. So I'm just going to use this technique here. You can see I'm kind of coming through with my thumbs and pinching and letting the weight of the pizza really pull itself down and open itself up. All right, you can see that that's already opened up quite a bit. Now I'm just going to use the backs of my hands from the center out to open up the pizza. All right, just like this, pulling gently and stretching. Let me show you what that looks like without the dough. Just pulling really gently like this, and then I'm popping my hands up and rotating them, and then catching the dough back on my knuckles, and then pulling out gently. No fingertips, you don't want any holes in your dough. So gently pulling out, and then tossing out, grabbing it, and then going through and stretching out again, just like that. And my pizza is nice and bubbly and stretch out to the 12-inch size that I'm going for. It's not quite the size that I want. Let's check this out. I'm just gonna do one of these, open it up just a little bit more, and then we are good to go. Sweet, this dough's looking really good. It's nice and bubbly, and I'm excited to start topping it. So the pizza I'm making today is my famous peppercini pizza. I like to designate pizzas by the way they're cooked and the type of dough that's used. For different styles, I don't like to use the toppings to designate a style. So this is a California style dough made in a California style way, in a Neapolitan style way. It does not mean that the toppings need to have California inspired toppings. These happen to be peppercini peppers that I believe were grown in California that I'm gonna show you, but I really don't care what you put on your pizza. When I talk about a style of pizza, I talk more about the dough that's being used and the technique that's used to bake it, if that makes sense. So you can put whatever you want on this and it will still be a Neapolitan California style pizza if you use this dough and you bake it in the way that I'm going to teach you. So bonus points here if you follow the garlic olive oil recipe in Pizza with Roasted Sourdough, which is super simple and very, very easy to make. And it just gives a ton of flavor. So I'm going to do a little cheat for my olive oil. Instead of making the garlic olive oil, I'm gonna use granulated garlic, which is my little secret weapon in the kitchen when you want some garlic flavor. Not garlic powder, granulated garlic is what you're looking for. All right, cool, so I've got that and I'm just gonna hit it with some mozzarella cheese. I like a really coarse grate on my mozzarella. And if you can find a whole milk mozzarella, and we're ready to go. A whole milk mozzarella, that's what you're looking for, and something with low moisture. There's a lot you can get into with different types of cheeses on your pizza and what that's gonna do for different cooking techniques and how much browning you're gonna get from your pizza. In general, the more fat or the more water that's in your pizza, the lighter the color is gonna be. The less fat or the less water, that it's gonna be browner. So I typically like to do a mix of a high fat and a low fat mozzarella just to get some different textures and some different color. But today I'm just going to go ahead and use this high fat, coarsely grated mozzarella cheese. All right, cool. So I've got that, I've got the size I want. Now I'm just gonna come in with my pepperoncinis. Peppercini is my favorite pizza topping. It is just the best. It's the best level of spice and acidity. It's just a fantastic, fantastic topping to put on pizza. And this pizza is an absolute killer. And I love to put a little bit of that extra peppercini juice around the pizza as I'm making it. I'll even grab some with my fork and kind of throw it around the pizza. We call it shouting the peppercini juice on the pizza, just because it's such a great flavor that it's gonna add. All right, that looks really good. Now a bunch of black pepper. Don't be shy with that. And then my secret weapon, granulated garlic. A little bit of this stuff goes a really long way. I'm just gonna do a tiny little pinch, just like that. And my pizza is ready to go. Now, if you're building a pizza and you're having trouble with it sticking to the peel, you wanna make sure that 1, you have really good dough, 2, that you're using a dredging flour, 3, that you've thrown a little bit of extra flour onto your peel, and 4, that there's no moisture on the peel. So I got a little bit of oil on the side there. I'm just gonna wipe that off. 5, you're not using any warm ingredients. So no warm ingredients on this pizza, and it should move just like that. So it's moving around really, really good. And I'm going to go launch it. I know my pizza oven's ready because it just told me, it just beeped at me. So let's go ahead and get this launched, and we're gonna bake this for about 4 minutes. Let's set the timer 4 minutes, see how it looks. Oh, and already it just smells absolutely amazing in here. It's incredible. The smell that you get off of this oven, it just smells incredible right now. So I'm gonna have my bamboo peel that I use to make the pizza on. That is what I'm going to plate up the pizza on as well and cut it up. And I'm just checking in there to make sure it's looking good. I'm gonna spin it about halfway through. You don't need to spin the pizza, but I find that it's a really good opportunity just to make sure that everything's looking really good. There's some really cool advanced features in the Ooni Volt that are really fun if you want to take your pizza making to the next level. And checking on it helps you kind of tune in to know when to use those features. Specifically, what I'm talking about is the balance button on the right. You're able to direct more power to the top elements or bottom elements, or even boost, reheat the stone if needed, if you're making lots of pizzas. There's a lot of power in that button, and we're gonna see if we're gonna need to use that when we check on it, see if we need to send more power to the top or the bottom. So it's been in there for about 2 minutes. I can tell because my timer is about to hit 2 minutes. I'm getting a lot of steam coming off the oven. That's totally fine, totally normal. A lot of steam baking off of that pizza. All right, so I'm at the 2 minute mark now, and I'm going to go ahead and check on the pizza and see how it's going. So the back is a little bit more done than the front. I'll explain why that is in a second, and the base is looking really good. I don't think I need to adjust anything. If the base was looking a little bit underdone at that point, I might have directed more heat to the bottom, but it's looking fine. So I'm not worried about it. At this temperature, the Neo-Neapolitan style, it has most of the power in the oven going to the top elements and some power going to the bottom elements. So the fact that the bottom was looking really done and really good already, and the top still needed some time, doesn't really scare me because most of that power is going to the top. I'm not gonna annihilate the bottom of the pizza if I leave it in there. For the Neapolitan style, everything's directed towards the top elements. You're cooking it at a higher temperature, so you need all that heat from the top so your base doesn't burn. And for lower temperature styles, it's more of a mix of the top and bottom elements to give you a really even bake. Oh, it looks so good. All right, we're just about at that 4 minute mark. There it is. Hit my timer knob, open this up, take out my pizza. Woo! That looks so good. All right, I wanted to tell you why it was a little bit more done in the back than in the front. So let me tell you why that is here after we get a quick admiration of the bottom of that pizza. Oh yeah, looks so good. And the coloring on the top looks really, really great as well. If someone told me they made this in a gas uni or a wood uni, I would totally believe them. Like, there's nothing looking at this to be like, oh, you made that in an electric oven, didn't you? There's nothing. It looks amazing. It sounds amazing. Listen to this. The little eggshell crispiness, you just can't get that in a different electric oven. It's impossible. This is the best one. Here we go, check it out. Ooh, it smells good. It sounds good. Look at that. You see that? That is beautiful. There's no flop. Look at that. See, the thickness is a little bit thicker, all right, than your Neapolitan style pizza. It's got a little more structure to it. Oh, it smells amazing. It sounds amazing. Tastes amazing. This is the pizza that you're gonna wanna make in your Ooni Volt. All right, so check out the recipe in Pizza with Roasted Sourdough. There's yeasted recipes available in there too. This exact recipe made with yeast instead of sourdough you can find there. It's absolutely amazing. It's such a great pizza, and it really shines with what the Ooni Volt can do when you make pizza like this. So check it out. Thank you for coming by. Drop some comments in the comment section on the styles of pizza that you want me to make, and stay tuned here at Pizza with Roasted Sourdough to see all of the different styles that we make here in the Ooni Volt 12. Thank you for coming by, and I'll talk to you soon. I'm gonna go eat this entire pizza by myself.